The following is intended only for mature audiences.
Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's Jmann. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm Jmann, and it's just me. And as is tradition with this show, when May rolls around, Mental Health Awareness Month hits, I tend to focus on topics that have to do with that, and I normally do it by myself. This year is no different. You'll see that I've waited till well deep into the month to sit here and formulate my thoughts, because I had one concept, and that's today, that I wanted to tackle, and I wasn't sure how to word it, because frankly, there's a war on men in our country. We are the enemy. We've ruined everything. Women hate us for every single fucking thing we do and blame all of their problems on us. But that's not what I'm here to bitch about or discuss. What I would like to talk about is how it seems that men's feelings don't matter. See, as the adage goes, women and children first, right? That's who we care about in an emergency. We take care of the women and the children. We save them. And the men are the ones that historically would do the saving, and we would give up our lives for them. Understandable. They were our wives, our girlfriends, our children, our mothers, our sisters, what have you. That's just the role that men play. Much like the traditional gender role of provider. Men would be the father in the family, and they would go to work and bust their ass and earn the bacon to pay for the house and the car and the food and the clothes and the everything. And they were the one that was expected to be the financial workhorse until times changed and women became more educated and independent and entered the workforce. So now you've got about an equal share there of people in jobs, in careers. So men aren't necessarily only the provider anymore. The women also do it. Which then leads me to my next statistic, is that the divorce rate in America is around 45%. 70% of those divorces are initiated by women, and of those 70%, it climbs to 80% if the woman is a higher earner. So what they do is they build themselves to be financially stable and decide, I don't need you anymore. And then what happens? Divorce time. You lose your house, mostly. You lose half of your stuff, typically. You lose your family and your sense of self because you've been a father and a husband. And while you're still a father, the statistics show that 96% of divorced men don't see their kids regularly after the fact because of the way that the courts have always sided with the women, saying the children need the mother. They've been the ones that have been home. They've been the caregivers. So while we were at work busting our asses, trying to provide a life for you, trying to make sure that you guys had comfort and a home and food in your bellies and clothes on your back and maybe some money for some toys or a vacation or to pay for sports and shit like that. And now you've taken the fact that we were at work diligently earning, trying to play our role, and you've weaponized it against us by saying that we didn't play an intricate enough part firsthand at raising the children because the woman was at home, not working as much. She would do the back and forth from school and to activities and doctor and dentist and therapy and everything and what have you. The mom would do a lot of the driving, wouldn't she? Interesting. But if the man's gone at work all day and he's expected to earn while he's working and she's helping take care of the house and shuffle the kids to and fro, well, I would just consider that traditional gender roles. But more importantly, what I'm trying to say here is division of labor. So like I said, they say, you haven't been here to raise these kids, and now you need to provide for me a level of comfort and a standard of living that's comparable to what we had when we were together, even though I was the one that left you and took half your shit. So now you have to work like a dog even harder, see your kids even less, watch mommy get either a bunch of fuck buddies or somebody new in their life that comes in and gets to play pal to your kids, and then potentially spend more time with them than you, especially if it becomes a long-term thing where they're in a steady relationship and he moves in or they move in with him. And now you've basically been completely emasculated by that, because as much as anybody will say, well, you're just insecure about having another man replacing you. Well, you're goddamn right I'm insecure about another man replacing me. These are my children. That is what any man would say. They are your babies. You made them. You want to raise them. It is your role, and that's how you feel. Because once you have kids, as a man, if you're a good one, if you're worthwhile, you never want to be away from your kids. You want to spend as much time with them as possible and foster their growth and build that relationship so they turn into good people. You want to be responsible for that. And then there's the guys that just knock somebody up and run, or they knock somebody up and they're there at first and then they bail, like my stepdaughter's father, because he can't get his shit together because he's too busy being homeless and doing drugs. And there's lots of men that don't take responsibility for what they've done by creating these lives. And if you want to be mad at those men, fine. Call them pieces of shit. Hate on them. But don't clump all men into the same category like we're all just one big ball of clay and we can be molded equally or just cast aside all the same. That's not the way this works. There are men and there are varying degrees of quality of them. And you have the ones that suck, and you have the ones that are kind of good, and you have the ones that are good, and then you have the super dads. The ones that can seemingly bust their ass at work, be a helpful husband around the house, and be there to be a coach or to attend every practice and game, and they give it their all. And still, with that 45% of marriages ending, those guys, even though they have risen to this unattainable standard of perfection at times, some of them will still lose it all because the woman that they married changes. Because that's what happens when you get married. Men expect their women to stay the same. They don't. Women expect men to change for the better. We don't always do that. So people grow apart, and then you see this bond is frayed, and then they separate, and rarely do they get back together. 87% of separations end in divorce. Only 13% of separations do they come back together and make it work. And then you've got your divorce rates that increase, I think, to 60% for second marriages and 75% for third marriages. And it's just like you get one fucking crack at getting that right. And if you don't, now you're middle-aged, you've got baggage, you barely know who you are anymore, and then you're just trying to work to provide for people that you don't even get to enjoy the fruits of your labor with because they're with her, your ex, or with her and her new partner, or God fucking knows what happens because people's lives go off the rails very easily. And what does it do to us? Well, as men, our suicide rate is much higher. In fact, men die by suicide 3 to 4 times more frequently than women. And for divorced men, they are 8 times more likely to commit suicide than divorced women. It seems that once the gals break free, they're like, oh, I'm loose of the shackles. He doesn't control me. I can do what I want. I have all this freedom. And they feel empowered. And they say, I don't need a man. Unfortunately, you ask us for spousal support and child support and to be there still. But you also don't want us because you want to call all the shots, which is very interesting, that you both don't need us but totally need us. And then don't need us and then don't want us, but the kids want us and they clearly need us, or else the courts wouldn't be giving men any custody at all. And that's where the tide needs to turn to like a nationwide standard of automatic joint custody anytime a married couple splits, or anytime an unmarried couple that's been together any length of time splits up. I'm not talking about we had a baby, it got stressful, he bounced, and now he wants custody 6 months down the line because he doesn't want to have to pay through the ass for that kid that he doesn't know. I'm talking about those families where those kids know that dad, and they're used to having that dad around. And they need to have that dad around because it's bad enough that he lost his spouse, his partner. All of your dreams just died. Everything you thought was going to be the future is no more, and all you're left with is a road in front of you like the opening credits of the show Highway to Heaven. It's just clouds and uncertainty. You don't know what the fuck's going to happen, right? So you're broken inside. You don't know how to be. And then to have to not see your kids as much is just going to send you further down the rabbit hole of depression. And some of these men, they can't attain what they owe in child support because the judge will say, well, you make this much, and if you lose that job, they still want you to pay every bit as much support, even if you get a job with the same amount of hours but less pay. I have heard that firsthand from a number of inmates that I had to deal with when I was a correctional officer. They bitched about how the court would never let them work the same amount of hours for less pay and pay less in child support because, well, the woman has this standard of living. What about her? Why isn't she getting out there? Why isn't she expected to go bust her fucking hump? Why doesn't she get to be carrying this cross, this fucking burden that she needs to be the provider? Because she's the one that wanted to leave. She's the one that sought this freedom. If you can't fucking say it, will it, do it, and then back it up, then why the fuck did you even make that decision? Didn't it dawn on you ahead of time that it was going to be this goddamn difficult? But I digress. The homelessness problem. The stats are at roughly 60% for cisgender men make up the homelessness. And then it's, 38% for women. And then there's something in between there. But I mean, you think about drug addiction, alcoholism. How many men fall into these bad habits because they lose their partner, they lose their family, they lose their house, their fucking dog, their cat, their what have you. Everything you had is now gone. Your life is not the same. It's basically like you're a three-legged dog trying to run a race against a bunch of other dogs that aren't handicapped. Or it's basically like you're a car that blew a piston and you're still trying to keep trucking down the road, constantly misfiring. And what that piston is your heart. It beats the same, but it doesn't feel the same because you have been emasculated. You have had your role taken, your pride shattered. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you are. You're just a fucking ball of statistics is what you are. And here's another one. And this goes for men in general. We get disease more, and that could be that we just have to work harder and live harder. Or, I don't know, it could just be that it's more hereditary for males, but here's the big one. Men, on average, die 8 to 10 years faster than women. And when you get divorced, it just expedites your trip to the grave because you have so many fucking secondary health issues after that. It's always going to stress you out, and that's going to put more wear and tear on your heart. And possibly you're going to get into drugs or alcohol, and that's going to run roughshod on your liver and your kidneys. But, I mean, the biggest thing is the mental health angle, right? After divorce. The depression, the anxiety, all the mental health issues you might develop. And therapy? Therapy's not for guys, right? We're supposed to suck it up. We're supposed to be tough. We're supposed to be badasses. We're supposed to hold it together. We're expected to be a beacon of hope and like a fucking statue. We're just supposed to let nothing bug us. But what happens is that we become more emotional because now the levee has broken and the tears come. So maybe you had a problem with anger before, and although it's a secondary emotion and it could be based upon fear or frustration or any other myriad of issues you were dealing with from stress from having to carry such a heavy load, no, it's you were angry and you scared us and, oh my God, you should get treated for that. But also, man, if you go to therapy and you start breaking down crying in front of your kids, you look weak, people think that you're messed up in the head. The next time you see a man trying to hide the fact that he's crying when he's clearly falling the fuck apart, I want you to think about what he possibly could be going through. And instead of pitying him or going, let's just cross the street or, uh-oh, he must be crazy, stop and go, dude, are you okay? Because I've been there. I've had to hide cry fits. I've broken down for various reasons from stress over the last 10 years, repeatedly. And sometimes I got angry and I threw something or I punched something, which was stupid and wasteful. And it was just me trying to express that I felt out of control and to control something, being an inanimate object, but it didn't help me. Negative coping mechanism. I figured that out because I was in therapy. And therapy helped me to figure out that I was right about a lot of things about myself. But oh, God help any man that's constantly seeing a shrink because, well, it's very easy to say, well, you should do something. You should talk to somebody. You should get some help. We don't, because we're conditioned to believe that that means weakness and that we can't be vulnerable that way or we'll be taken advantage of or not seen as real men. Hell, there's a whole fucking army of shitty, toxic masculinity pumping assholes out there that see another guy cry or breaking down or something. They fucking mock him like some bully on the playground that never emotionally matured at all. So is it any wonder that we hide our emotions and we bottle things up and we compartmentalize what's bothering us, hoping that our family won't see us with these pressure cracks and think, uh-oh, dad doesn't have control, because we are meant to be seen as leaders. Whether people want to bitch about traditional gender roles or not, that is how men are seen. We're the ones that go fight the wars. We're the ones that do all the shitty heavy lifting in terms of construction and road building, and women can do all that too, but they typically don't. I mean, if you look at the military death rate, it's 90% male. That's a lot of dicks in the dirt. And how many of them went out there to fight out of some sense of patriotism and love for their country, and while they were gone, the person that they were dating or married to fucked around on them or couldn't handle the distance or the stress and left them. And we come back from war and we have PTSD and our bodies are broken or blown apart and we're not the same and we don't know how to reacclimate into society. We're just basically meant to be toy soldiers and robots that don't show any visage of emotion whatsoever. But once we do, apparently we're no longer strong, we're no longer as full of integrity, and we're no longer desirable, unfortunately, is how it seems. And I gotta say, it's funny that when relationships have problems with intimacy, it's typically that the man wants more sex or more touch and the woman does not, and then it becomes transactional because she says, you need to turn me on emotionally. You need to be in tune with who I feel I am. And he's like, I just need to be touched. I just need to be hugged. There's a war inside my head, but the second your arms are around me, none of that seems to matter. All the fog of war clears, and I just feel at peace. So women will say things like, oh, he needs to earn it, or he's got a hand. Well, the man doesn't want to go play with himself. He wants human interaction. He wants to be with the person that he loves, the woman that he loves. He wants you. But that's apparently not enough, because it seems that women never let anything go. Every mistake we ever make is sitting there on some fucking tally board like it's some bookie's office in some underground speakeasy in the goddamn 1930s with the odds of, oh, how long before she brings up this or that or this other thing, or she conflates something that he did that was minor and turns a molehill into a mountain for the sake of winning an argument, because that's how it seems women function. And I hate to sound like I'm shitting on women, because I love women. There are a lot of great qualities, but I need you to focus on this. As much as you say that men are emotionally mature and we're fucking man children and we're not in tune with who you are and how you feel and how to treat you, the fact of the matter is that these days, women are acting more like men are acting more like women. We've gotten more in touch with our emotions. We've been the ones to cry and keep trying even though it seems like there's nothing going to work for us. We're the ones that keep trying to be the father and hold the family together. We're the ones that just keep working and pushing and trying to be everything to everybody and running people here, there, and everywhere. And the women, they just want their freedom and to figure themselves out and find themselves. So for as much as women say that men are selfish and hate on us, boy, it sure seems like women have gotten a hell of a lot more selfish and like men and only care about their own needs and fuck what your man feels, thinks, or wants. And just for reference, before we go, to pat myself on the back, I'd like to point out that the first 7 minutes and 35 seconds of this rant of an episode was a single take where I didn't have any script or any notes other than what was in my head and in my heart. That's how badly I feel that men aren't cared about enough. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It? That is at What Do We Call It? You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It Podcast Show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm Jmann. And that's the end.